Hello, my kako. This is part two of our story of Haumea, the mo'o, and the vai. It's actually more about mo'o. This is about how we find the mo'o on Oahu and where we find them. So this is Hawaiian Studies 270, our lecture on mo'o vahine part two. Let's begin our survey of mo'o on Oahu with its 113 fish ponds in Ko'olaupoko. Ko'olaupoko is a moku district, or which are underground water areas, management areas, that has 24 fish ponds, 1,904 acres of fish pond, full of mo'o wahine. One of the most interesting places is Kualoa, and the cliffs of Kualoa are called the Aina Paliku or the Aina o Haumea. This is where the makahiki season begins, or the makahiki procession. And there's a large fish pond just adjacent there, which maybe belongs to Haumea because she lives right there. So how could it not belong to her? That is called Moli. And here is a map of Kualoa, and you can see how Kualoa is divided from the next Ahupua'a over, which is Hakipu'u. Pu'u Kanehoalani, the sun god, is the top of that mountain. Paliku is this ridge. It's also called the Mo'okapu o Haloa, or the sacred genealogy of Haloa. But there's a pond down below called Koholalele. There's another one called Apua, and then there's this very large one, number 313, which is called Moli'i Fish Pond. So in Ko'olaupoko, there are three mo'o that are very famous, probably a lot more that are not so famous. And one of them is called Moli'i, and I think that was for Haumea, that pond. Another one is Mokoli'i. We're going to hear about how he was killed by Hi'iaka. Another mo'o is Ma'ele'ele. He too was killed by Hi'iaka when she came through, and Hi'iaka is the younger sister of Pele if you have not met her before. But there are mo'o in this. Now, here is a shot of an aerial shot of both Kualoa and Mokoli'i Island. It is said in the traditions of Pele and Hi'iaka that Mokoli'i was a male mo'o who attacked Hi'iaka as she chanted to her father Kanehoalani. So she killed Mokoli'i and cut him into pieces. Only the tail remains as the island protruding from the ocean. That's how big he was, because that was the tip of his tail. But if we're looking at fish ponds, we want to see that here are the beginning of the 24 fish ponds. Here's Moli'i, and here's another little one, Apua. And these are comprise almost 2,000 acres in Ko'olaupoko. Moli'i Fish Pond, as I've said before, was perhaps dedicated to Haumea, who lived in the cliffs of Paliku, but I'd like you to know that the pond itself is 124 acres, quite a large pond. The next big pond around the corner is the He'eia fish pond of 88 acres. Meheanu is the mo'o of that pond, very well known. And here's an aerial view of it, or a map of it rather. It kind of looks like an opihi, and sometimes it's referred to as Opihi Pond. But here is a photograph from 1910 Bishop Museum, and you can see how calm and how beautiful the wall is. That there used to be no mangrove there whatsoever, of course, because mangrove just came in recently on the land. Now, here are the fish ponds of Mokampu Peninsula. They're about 331 acres altogether, creating about 99,000 pounds of fish a year. The largest one was Nu'upia of 215 acres. The smaller one, Haliko, 92 acres. The name that's on this map, Heleloa, is incorrect. This is Haliko, 92 acres. And then a smaller one called Puhi, and this was 24 acres. But altogether, about 331 acres of fish pond. We don't have the names of the mo'ovahine of these ponds. They're still there, though. They are controlled by the um, Mokapu Marine Corps Air Station, the base. Now here's some interesting ponds. These are the Kailua fish ponds. We know Hauvahine is the mo'o. She's very famous. There's many chants about her. And we can see that Kawai Nui, which is now called a swamp, was actually a 450-acre fish pond entirely inland. There never used to be a canal that drained Kavainui and took all the fresh water out to the sea. It was entirely inland, and the only connection it had with the ocean was this little canal that actually met up with Ka'elepulu Fish Pond, which was 280 acres. So Hauvahine is the name of the mo'o of these ponds, totally inland. Here's the ocean towards the right-hand side of this map. This is about 1913 when this map was drawn. 730 acres, 219,000 pounds of fish every year, just from those places. And of course, we're not getting any fish in there now. Here's another view of Hauvahine and her inland fish ponds. This is kind of what it looks like today. Overgrown by grass because not enough water being held within the pond. And here is Ka'elepulu in Kailua today, of course heavily polluted. Now, if you come around the corner through Waimanalo into the area we call Hawaii Kai today, there is another fish pond, and it's called Kuapa. Today it's the Hawaii Kai Marina. But before, this land was called Mauna Lua. It was an ili, or a smaller section of Waimanalo, that is in the time of the Bukit Mahele in 1848. But the stories from the kupuna say that this fish pond was connected underground to Ka'elepulu and Kavainui. And that's why I think this land, even though it's facing south and we would think it would be in the Kona district, is still connected to Waimanalo district, to Ko'olaupoko, because it's connected underground to Ka'elepulu and Kavainui. And that made me think that Moko districts are underground water boundaries. All of this has to do with the mo'o wahine. This is what they do. They take care of water on the surface and water in the fish pond. So in this Mauna Lua ili of Ko'olaupoko, Kuapa Fish Pond was 523 acres, the largest fish pond in the Pacific. It only had 3 makaha. So there's a tremendous amount of fresh water that was coming up in that fish pond. It was connected to Ka'elepulu and Kavainui. So I'm wondering, is this for Hauvahine too? Lots of fresh water there. It was important that they built a 6-foot wall. In fact, the road used to go over that fish pond wall, the road that went around the island, in order to protect the reefs of that area from too much fresh water coming out. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been any reef. Wouldn't have reef fish there. Okay, now we're looking at Konamoku. There are 49 fish ponds in Konamoku, about 1,000 acres. I've actually heard that there's quite a bit more fish ponds that I don't know of, and so this is a work in progress. Yeah, but we do know something about the mo'o. Here in Manoa area and Waikiki area, the mo'o wahine was called Mauoki, and she was worshipped at a heiau of that name that today has been destroyed, but it is, or was, right where you take the University off ramp from the freeway. You know how it circles down to University Avenue? That's where Mauoki's heiau was before. Yeah. And so here is Puck's Alley area, and there were 5 inland fish ponds right adjacent to this temple. Here's where the heiau was. Now that kind of heiau is called a vaihau. Vaihau. Didn't get a chance to put it into this iteration of slideshow, but I'm going to introduce to you that word vaihau. And there is a fish pond here called Maui, and it's a 3-acre pond, which is kind of large for the inland pond. These are totally inland. They're not anywhere near the sea. You know where Puck's Alley is. It's the bottom of University Avenue and King Street, far from the ocean. And yet these are freshwater ponds. Here's a wonderful map from 1881 of all the Waikiki Lo'ikalo. That's all these lines that are coming down. Those dark lines are actually awai that feed the Lo'ikalo with water. And as we come towards the shoreline at the bottom part of the map, we see some very large fish ponds. This is where Fort DeRussy is today. They filled in the pond as soon as they got the land. This is kind of a blue coloring in that I did to show the waterways for these ponds and for Lo'i. And here is an interior fish pond of Waikiki in 1905, kind of near Kapi'olani Park. Here are some fish ponds of Makiki looking towards Diamond Head in about 1921. So that whole area around Ward Avenue going down to Ala Moana, that all used to be duck ponds. My mother used to say, it's duck ponds. These are duck ponds when she was talking about really were fish ponds, inland fish ponds. She was born in 1920, so that's what she remembered. And then where the Willows restaurant is today, there were quite a number of ponds, and one, Pa'akea Fish Pond, was about 6 acres. So inland fish ponds by Puck's Alley, inland fish ponds by Willows Restaurant, and even the ponds that we see towards the shoreline where Fort DeRussy is today are still very much inland. They're not on the ocean. These are inland freshwater ponds. Here's a close-up. Yeah, this is where Fort DeRussy is today. Kaiapuni, Kaihikapu, Pavel. Not really hundreds of acres, but nice enough to make fish for the people living around there. Okay, we're going a little bit further along in the Kona district into Nu'uanu. And of course, I'm going to come back to talk to you about Nu'umehalani when I talk to you about Haumea, because this is where Haumea was born and where the first Haleopapa female temple was made. But over here, if you go up Liliha Street, there is a little place called Kunawai Pond. It's the home of Mo'oinanea. You can still go and see it there today. It is a freshwater pool. There used to be 5 of those pools, and now there's only one. But each of those pools had a special kind of mineral in it for healing. So Mo'o Wahine are also connected to the healing arts, not only to fresh water, but to health and to healing. Okay, these are the Kalihi fish ponds that mostly have been destroyed where Sand Island is. Sometimes you folks go down to Mapunapuna to maybe buy building supplies. That used to be a 40-acre fish pond. And then there was Alia Pa'akai up here. This was a salt pond of about 50 acres. They filled it in quite a lot. So salt water came up in Alia Pa'akai, and that's why it was called the salt pond. But these areas along here are all freshwater ponds. And here's Ananoho Fish Pond of Kapalama, filled in for industrial use. Now here's a couple of interesting ponds. One is called Lelepaua and also Kaihikapu. Lelepaua and Kaihikapu were 590 acres of fish pond. Now they are under the reef runway. So the reef runway they were filled in to put in the reef runway. And I think it was back in the 60s actually, not too long ago. Okay, who are the women of Nu'umehalani, the area above Vaulani, above the Oahu country? There are quite a number of mo'o that live in this area. Mo'oinanea is below it. There are Uli, Haumea, Valinu'u, Valimanoanoa, Kalamainu'u. These are all the mo'o wahine worshipped in the Haleopapa that was begun on that cliff of Nu'uanu. And here's a close-up of Kunawai Pond, the home of Mo'oinanea, still there. Now, Haumea lived with Wakea at Kilohana in Kalihi, and this is a valley, Kalihi. Some people say Kilohana is here on the mountain on the left-hand side of the Wilson Tunnel as you go up. Some say no, Kilohana is on the right-hand side. There's still a debate going on about it. This is a picture, a map that comes from Kamehameha schools, and they say this is Lanihuli on the right and Kilohana on the left. But my understanding was Lanihuli is a pu'u that's very close to Nu'uanu Pali. It's a very distinctive, rounded kind of pu'u. So I've still got to do more research there. But I'd like you to know that the valley of Kalihi is called Kalihilihi au Laumiha, and Laumiha was a very ancient mo'o wahine of Oahu. I'm arguing that Kilohana is on the right-hand side of Kalihi, and in the stories, this is where Haumea and Wakea lived at Kilohana, where the work is to watch the stars, and that's why it takes its name Kilohana. And here are the Kalihi fish ponds once again. So if we're looking at Kona Oahu, we can see quite a lot of fish ponds to Moanalua. Now we're going to Ewa. The Moku district of Ewa around Pearl Harbor area had 31 fish ponds, about 1,200 acres. So some of those ponds were fairly large. The most important mo'o wahine of this area that I'd like you to remember is named Kane Kua'ana. And she was the mo'o wahine of Pu'uloa or Pearl Harbor. There are lots of stories of how she was prayed to, and they would build special temples called waihau for her, like the waihau they had for Milwaukee at Kanikuana. They would build the Waihau Temple to bring her back into Pearl Harbor because when she came, she would bring the oysters back into the bay, and people would be very happy to eat oysters. I'd also like you to know that the Mo'ovahine Kanikuana is the inspiration for lots of female chiefly names on Oahu. So even though Kani means man, and Kane you would think would be a male's name, on Oahu, Kane is a name of female chiefesses, and Kane is always a name for Oahu. I don't care if the person whose last name is Kane is born in Kuala Lumpur, their family is from Oahu. And here are all the lovely fish ponds of this area. This map was done in about 1912. Some very large inland fish ponds. Most of them have been filled in. Some of them are still there but are heavily polluted because all of Pearl Harbor is a toxic waste site today from the nuclear submarines being homeported there and all the toxic waste coming off the submarines. Okay, now we're going to Waianaimoku. There were two fish ponds there, about 1 acre in size, not too big. Waialua Moku, two fish ponds, about 5 acres in size. The very famous mo'o of Waianae district is La'i. She used to live in Makua, and of course, those of us who study the Komolipo know that La'i is a mo'o wahine that's known in the Komolipo. I want to also point out that this area of Waianae, the fish pond, was close by Pokai, and another one was at the top of Mount Kaala. There was a little half-acre fish pond at the top of Mount Kaala. It was called Luakini, which means a temple, and it had saltwater fish in it. Don't know how they got there, but that's what I've heard, and that's what's in sites of Oahu. Note that in Waialua, where there's not very much fish pond, the mo'o wahine is called Lani Wahine. That is, she is a heavenly woman, Lani Wahine of Wailua. Of course, I would like you to know these names for the exam. Mahalo. The fish ponds of Waialua are close to Haleiwa town. They are inland ponds as well, about 5 acres. This is on Kamehameha School's property today. This is a aerial shot of Waialua, and Lanivahine is in the Uko'a Pond, but you can't see the pond very well from this shot because the ponds are well inland. Okay, now we're going to Ko'olauloa Moku, 7 fish ponds, about 18 acres. They're all kind of small. And this is what Ko'olauloa looks like, starting from Waimea and going all the way to Ka'ava. The mo'o that are associated with fishing and fish ponds of this area that are kind of famous, one is Laniloa from Laie Point, male mo'o, killed by Hi'iaka, of course. I don't know, she didn't like male mo'os too much, although her mother was a mo'o. Don't know what's going on there. And then we have Kaliuwa'a, which is the name of the waterfall and the pool in the back of Kaluanui. And I think Kaliuwa'a actually is the name of the mo'o. And then in Kahana we have Huilua, and I believe that's the name of the mo'o there too. I could be wrong, but I think that may be true. Let's take a look. So here's Laniloa, and we see that there are islands off the coastline here. They are supposed to be body parts of the mo'o called Laniloa that was killed by Hi'iaka when she came through. Somebody said something rude to her, she would kill them. Oh, that's kind of scary. Hmm. And then Here is a view of the waterfall on the back of Kaluanui, and it's called Kaliuwa'a. Kaliuwa'a, the leaky canoe. It's actually kind of a dangerous place because of, I think, climate change. We've had a lot of rock slides and people dying in this area. And here's my favorite. Here's the pond in Kahana. It's called Huilua. I grew up in Kahana. This pond's about 14 acres, and I believe that the mo'o there is Huilua. I think that's the name. So if we look at this map of Kahana from 1913, we'll see there's a pond at the bottom of the bay, but there are also inland ponds, mauka of the road. Which brings us back to Kualoa. So I'd like you to see different names of Mo'ovahine, at least know one for each Moku district. Hauvahine for Ko'olaupoko, Mawoki for Kona, Kanikuaana for Eva, La'ila'i for Waianae, Lanivahine for Waialua. Okay, that brings us back to Kualoa, the land of Haumea, and our wonderful fish pond of Moli'i. This ends section 2, and we will be going to section 3 shortly, where we hear mo'o stories. Aloha!